Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. My name's Matthew, and I'm joined today by Nadir Izrael, who is the co-founder and CTO at Armis Security. How are you doing today, Nadir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for being with us today, for taking time out of your schedule to speak to us. When we start, if you don't mind, Nadia, could you tell our viewers a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Sure. My name is Nadir Izrael. I'm the CTO and co-founder at a company called Armis Security, which the name might imply, and it is a cybersecurity company that sells to enterprises and has been around for about 8 years now. Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that, speak to my journey, and generally kind of what we've been up to.
Fantastic. Let's start at the beginning. So something interesting that we spoke about before recording. You've been programming since you were 12. So a very early start here. Can you tell us how that came about?
Sure. I, as a kid, was about as nerdy as you could get. I think still am to this day. But I got interested in programming after my dad actually got me a book on just basically learning how to program. This was after I have stripped apart and rebuilt our home computer a few times and did a bunch of things around that and games of the period. But I think that once I started to really get into that, he got me a book. I kind of self-taught myself programming, and then I ended up really liking it, getting into it, and I ended up doing after school hours course.
Sorry, I lost you there for a second. Your father got you a book?
Yeah, my father got me a book. I got really into programming, and eventually, not only was I excited about it, I wanted to expand even more, and I ended up going to this after school hours course. This was during the dot-com boom. This was late 1990s. So there were courses left and right for people to transition into this new area of high tech. And I did one of those after school, and I ended up going into high school already with quite a bit of knowledge and experience, and it only kind of expanded from there. I still to this day really love it, but alas, these days I don't get to do nearly as much of that as I used to.
I have to ask, out of interest, you said that you were working on your family computers. What sort of ranges are we talking about here? Computer models for the youngsters?
Oh, this was anything from 386s to, at the time, very new novel Pentium computers of the time. This is early 1990s, 1990, 1991, when I kind of got my first computer. I remember there wasn't nearly as much to do with it at the time, but between that and figuring out different ways to connect online and kind of early days of the World Wide Web, it was a pretty exciting period of time to learn how to do all of these things.
Nice. So I have an idea now. I remember the times, the Pentium ones, Windows 98, dial-up connections that woke everybody up in the house. So
Yes.
That's fantastic. So a really good start for you there, and you finished school and then you knew what you wanted to do, or was there still a bit of doubt? Did you know, this is where I want to go, this is what I'm getting into?
I think I've always wanted to start a company one day. That was something that was in my head for a long time. But I think between my service in the army, which is mandatory in Israel, but I was a programmer there as well. Very cliche background for cybersecurity in Israel. This is the background of pretty much every founder out there. But I spent some time in kind of Israel's version of the NSA, about 6 years, and then I left to go study. I studied computer science and physics. I think that there's an alternate version of me that went on to do a PhD in physics. There was about 15 minutes that I was considering that. I really love the area. It's one of these things where I want to come back to it one day. But I also started working at Google. I worked there for a few years on Google Suggest or Autocomplete and Google Maps. And I ended up, after that, leaving to kind of start my journey as a founder. I tried for about a year and a half to start different things with kind of different founders on in other areas like fintech. This was like around the year 2014. So it was the heyday of small business loan platforms and things like that. So I tried a little bit in kind of that area, but eventually I think after a lot of also introspection about areas of strength and where things can really kind of work as strengths, I found myself kind of going back to cybersecurity, which is really the area that I know best and an area where I know a lot of people in that ecosystem. And 8 years later, here we are.
Fantastic. Can you talk us through the birth of Armis? When did you know, okay, you said you tried a few things before, a year and a half, and can you tell us about its birth when you knew, okay, I'm on to one now, this is the one which I'm sticking to?
I think the birth of Armis, and I keep telling this to founders, I think that founding a startup is first and foremost, and maybe even 99%, who your co-founders are, who your partners are. Well before, I think most founders go straight to ideas and markets and the exciting things, but it really boils down to who you're making this journey with. And I think that my co-founder, Yevgeny, is someone that I've known for years before, but have really gotten to know, I think, over in school, basically in university. I think this would not have worked without the dynamic that we've been able to produce between us, because once that dynamic is there and it sort of clicks, you start figuring other things out. You start working through what problem you're trying to attack. How do you go about it? Yevgeny's background is, while I was at Google, he actually worked at another cybersecurity startup that got sold to Microsoft. He was the first employee there, and he ended up doing a 3-year journey with them. And the second that they got sold to Microsoft is the second he left, and we kind of started Armis. And we did something that at the time was considered very novel, which is we asked people what they're missing. I know that sounds a little funny in retrospect because it's something so trivial to do, but at the time I think that the romanticization of startups was that you sit in a garage, you come up with some idea, you go and test the market, and boom, it blows up. But I think that we leveraged a lot of different connections from previous lives, especially Evgeny's connection to clients of Adalom, and essentially sat down with different chief information security officers who are the main kind of client base for cybersecurity, and essentially asked them, what are big problems in your life right now? What are things that you're missing? And I think the results were a little shocking to us in the beginning, at least to me. I would say that your average CISO or chief information security officer would say they don't know what they have. They have no concept of what devices or what assets they even have in their environment, which to me was you bought this stuff, right? The organization bought this stuff. How can you not know what you have? But understanding, I think, corporate enterprises better today than I did then, it's actually really easy to see how in a very, very large environment, but even in smaller ones, it's really hard to keep track of everything going on. And the fundamentals of security are really knowing what you have in order to know what to protect. So I think it set us on a path to a lot of success so far. And over the last 8 years, the company has grown today to be over 700 people large and kind of multinational. And I think it's a really interesting trajectory to kind of look through from then to now.
So that's incredible. So quite a growth rate you've got going on there. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the challenges you faced, some things that you didn't expect? How did you overcome them? And if you can touch on some lessons you might have learned along your way that you can share.
Challenges are everywhere. I think as much as I thought to prepare myself to kind of the worst case scenarios of things and stuff like that, the reality is that it's that hard and then some. I think there are challenges and then there are surprising challenges. And I think that no matter how much you try and prepare for things, the constant notion of a startup is that it's always surprising you. It's always unexpected. There are always challenges that you're not going to be able to prepare for, and that's just okay. I think that being able to not just live with that, but love that is really at the heart of being a founder. I think you need to be very comfortable in the land of uncertainty, in the land of not knowing if the path you're marching on is the right path, and keep questioning yourself on it, because there's really no right and wrong answers for anything. And I think be very, very focused on just what the problems are that the company as a company faces at the time. Like, for instance, I think that for me and for probably a lot of technology-oriented founders, the sweet spot, the comfort zone, is really tackling technology challenges. It's almost like if I'm sitting in front of a computer and coding something, I know how to do this. This is a very comforting thing to do. Your instinct is to take any idea that you have and go right ahead and try to make it real. But if you kind of think about what the existential threats to a startup early on is, for most startups, not maybe deep tech or all kinds of other things, but for most startups out there that sell to businesses or consumers, the underlying assumption is whatever you need to implement, you'll implement. And if you can't implement exactly that, you'll implement something close to it. The implementation isn't usually an existential challenge. You'll get it somehow. The existential challenge is, does anyone care? Is what you're trying to build even relevant to anyone, or does it matter to anyone, or will anyone buy it? And I think that one of the challenges and one of the things that you need to really early on orient yourself around is you need to be maniacal about answering that. If you're not doing something right now to answer that, or that's advancing that goal, you are misappropriating resources from the company. So I think that when you start thinking like that, you start understanding that meeting with customers, even showing them entire mock-up demos and trying to sell them on it, is crucial to get real-world feedback of, is what I'm doing the right thing? Applying all the rest of the stuff is according to that. So development, product research, marketing, all that stuff is in service of answering that fundamental question. And then you think you answered it, and you're already kind of starting to ramp up and clients are coming and everything is great. And then you realize it's actually a moving target. Markets are fickle. Product market fit is not a static target. It's a moving target, and you need to keep tracking it, which means that this is kind of a never-ending process. If you're not asking yourself at a given point in time, what are customers actually trying to buy, and what am I trying to provide them, and is it the right thing, then you're, again, missing the mark. And contrary to maybe my belief, I thought that, 8 years in, at some point, this gets easy, but it really doesn't. It keeps being hard. It keeps being challenging and interesting, but also difficult. And I think that you really need to love getting slapped in the face a bunch and really enjoying the journey on the way there if you plan to really make this your livelihood.
Talking about changing environments, changing markets, we know that cybersecurity in itself is a constantly shifting beast, if you will. How do you stay ahead? How do you stay current? We know that there's new challenges every day, new threats that you have to face and be ahead of. How do you stay ahead of the loop?
Good. Really, really good question, I think, because cybersecurity is a really interesting market in that sense. It has a little bit of a unique dynamic to it. One of the unique things is that it's a market that is constantly growing for the last 20 years at least, and it seems to be growing even as other markets are either downsizing or being affected more by macroeconomics. Cybersecurity seems to be a little bit immune to that. Now, it's immune to that because of two major reasons. And if you understand those, then you start understanding how to predict certain aspects of that market. The interesting thing about cybersecurity is it's mainly affected by two components. One is changing IT landscape. The fact is that the IT landscape is changing constantly. 10 years ago or 15 years ago even, smartphones came into being. So this whole idea of bring your own device, using your own smartphone became a thing. Before that, if you tried to tell people that one day we're going to be walking around with a super powerful computer in our pocket at all times, going back to our DOS and Windows days, people would laugh at you. Of course, no one is going to be walking around with a computer. No one is nerdy like that. But then iPhone came out and suddenly we're all walking around with an incredibly powerful computer in our pockets and we use it for everything. That was followed a few years later by the first ideas of cloud and SaaS, followed immediately after by Internet of Things, followed immediately after by really leveraging cloud infrastructure for pretty much everything. And now we're even in the land of AI and what that basically does, for everyone. So I think when you sort of look at all of that, security is constantly a changing target for security organizations. They're constantly needing to secure yet another thing, yet another circumstance, yet another situation. Even things like COVID, for instance, introduced suddenly this whole idea of before you invested in walls around your network. Now your network is incredibly distributed and everybody's working from home. And how do you even secure such a distributed and branched environment? So on the one hand, there is the IT landscape changing constantly. That's constantly necessitating new solutions to come into being. And that's why we have so many different startups out there. The second thing this market has, as opposed to a lot of other markets, is an adversary, a very, very capable set of adversaries who see the market opportunity from their perspective as taking advantage of deficiencies in security. It's a very lucrative market, as we all see. Cyber attacks are everywhere, and it's fueled by both criminal activities as well as geopolitics and nation states. So it's a recipe for complete chaos. It's a recipe also, though, for growth. I think that you constantly are in need for new solutions to get in front of both of these different challenges. And herein, I think, also lies the predictive nature of what you can do to kind of think about security. Usually security is, I wouldn't say lagging, but definitely following the IT landscape changes and is constantly growing and being fueled by world geopolitics and other things like that. So if you are looking at IT trends like cloud or AI or identity or other things that are basically happening in and around this, you can actually see exactly where the security market is going. And you can also start realizing, if you look at the competitive landscape that you're in, where can you place bets that would set you apart from other solutions? The only other thing I would say is that in cybersecurity, there are two types of companies predominantly. There are feature companies that you build because you want to get bought by some other company in the future, whether you think about that early on or not. And then there's platform companies that are built to stay. And I think that you need to make that decision pretty early on of what you're trying to build, because it ultimately sets you on very different paths and strategies on the way there. I think that the market is experiencing extreme consolidation and feature companies are kind of going away and getting bought up, which is fine. And that's potentially a very good outcome for founders, but it just depends on what you're trying to do in that market.
If you don't mind, we can touch on just a little bit about the advent of, we've spoken a bit about this battle that's going on. How is the implementation of these supercomputers and AI affecting your markets?
Heavily. I would say that, first of all, AI, I think most people don't yet understand how significant AI is going to transform everything that we know the way that we know it. I think people think about automation, they think about jobs going away, but they don't truly grasp just how foundational everything is with AI and how much that's going to change everything we know. Even in IT and security, I don't think there's a good understanding of that quite yet. I think it's going to make cloud as an example and our reliance on cloud applications and platforms look minuscule in comparison. And the reason is quite simple. Today, and for the last however many decades, we've been used to companies giving us an interface into how to consume their information, understand what to do with it. AI puts all of that to shame. I think that the true promise of AI when it comes to data consumption and all the products that we use today, from social networks to video chat to anything else, imagine for a second that the entire interface and the way we consume data can change dramatically based on what AI can do. AI, for instance, can be used to create your own tailored interface. Like, I can decide that I want to consume data a certain way. In fact, it has the promise of turning any kind of quote-unquote dumb data set into a contextual, intelligent entity that you can interact with. So if you sort of follow that track, why have interfaces to anything at all? If my AI can generate whatever interface I need right now to see and dissect and understand what I need to do right now, or give me the highlights from my social network feed, or build me an interface on the fly based on my input that I can keep giving it to do whatever I need, why have interfaces for anything at all? Now, if you continue that track, today, I might be traveling and driving a lot. So today, most of my consumption of information would actually happen through, let's say, audio. I want to listen to things. But tomorrow, I'm sitting in front of my computer all day on Zoom meetings. So I need like these little notifications here and there when that AI deems that something is important enough to get my attention. The options here are really limitless into how to transpose and do things. Now, where that meets the security world is in a ton of different places. First of all, and I think the first thing that we're going to come across, and we're already starting to come across, is AI attack platforms. Just like how you have already scammers that are using things like that, so we're going to see full-blown AI attack platforms that can quickly overwhelm just human defenders. So AI and automation is the first step of this whole puzzle. But the second step, and the even more troublesome one, is that we've spent so many decades building these like secure repositories of data, building boxes for data that are meant for human consumption. In a world where that's not necessary anymore, and I can just let an AI scour all the data and all the different spreadsheets and computers and things everywhere in an organization and build an understanding of what that means, there's no real reason to hoard data in any one place anymore. And quickly, this will become completely chaotic. This will create challenges for security that, to be honest, I can't even imagine yet how we're going to solve, because it's unclear how this is even going to evolve. But we're going to see a period of very rapid evolution of all the tools and all the IT landscape that we all use, both as consumers as well as companies. And that's going to cause challenges that would probably morph the entire industry altogether. So all the companies that today exist, all the things here, it's either advance into a brave new world of AI that might change entire offerings of what you do, or die. That's kind of, I think, and it's very interesting, it's very challenging, but it's also huge. So lots are happening.
Lots of things going on. Well, I think I speak on behalf of everybody in the world when I say, please stay ahead of this and keep us safe.
Right. We try.
Nadia, if I can ask you, is there anything I may have missed, anything you'd like to pass on to our viewers and our listeners if they'd like to get hold of you or find out more about your company?
Absolutely. First of all, you're more than welcome to go to armis.com and see what we have to offer on that front, but also you're more than welcome to just reach out to me over LinkedIn or over any other kind of social media platform. And I might not answer immediately, but I try to answer at least any kind of reach out, and appreciate the time today and the conversation.
Thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. We will be keeping an eye on you in the future, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.